Okay, so I'm live. That's cool. And I think I'm going to stand up for this one. I'm going to have to adjust the camera a little bit. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I think that should do it. Uh, the light, I can take care of this, I think. So I'm going to do that. Give me a moment. Have my here. Kind of use it to block the light coming in. I need to get something up here a little bit better than that to sort of do that. Maybe have to put it more in the middle. Does that do it? Okay, I'll go with that. So yeah, part two. Let me see. This shouldn't be too hard because the last time I talked about this, I think the one point that I was kind of saying is that whether or not a God exists, is really I'm indifferent to that point. So that's kind of my where I put my atheism, and I'm going to refine that just a little bit more. We have to think about the root of the word and where it comes from. In ancient Greece, theism, atheism. Okay, during that time, as some of you may know, that people had different gods. Some people would go and burn flowers or bring flowers to Athena's temple. Some people worship Minerva. Other people went for, sometimes I get the Greek and the Roman gods confused because they were very similar. They kind of, but at the end of the day, there were a lot of gods and different gods for different things. And so I would think that the atheist was the person that said, meh, you know, I can't choose. I don't have a preference for any one of these gods, and so that's kind of in the light that I look at. There's a lot of talk about God and people, religions and all these structures and everything like that. Finding, and I as a kid, I was a voracious reader, and one of the things I had read Bullfinch's mythology, which I really loved, and that's kind of where I'm, how I'm talking about this, because I read a lot about that, even though I didn't actually read the full book. I read sort of the synthesized version, and this is when I was a kid, when I was like 10, 11 years old. But so really now it's a lot easier to accept God than it is to not accept God, because when you don't accept a God, you're kind of on your own. So what does it mean if you don't have a God? What structure is in place? But that's not a question that atheism is meant to answer per se. Simply, again, atheism is simply, for me, it's, hey, I have no idea whether there is a God or not. And I'm very indifferent to it because I really, don't see any particular evidence or anything that really, just to say life is, and all the definitions, I mean, nothing squares with regards to the information. So, it's very difficult to accept that. But when you know that, okay, the other side of that is scary. It's not easy. Okay, even though as a kid, I had some experiences, like I was telling my aunt earlier, um, that I would go to church and I would get with my parents, my mom and my dad, and I was 7 years old, and I'm sitting in a Catholic church in a small, pastoral town in, Washington, New Jersey. Really nice church. I mean, and a packed church too, small packed church. I don't remember actually the pews having very many spaces. You actually had to look for your seat. And I was an altar boy as well. And my mom was actually brought up in a very strict Roman Catholic environment. So, she had a lot of expectations, and I went to Catholic school. And so when you're always questioning, you're like, this doesn't square, even as a kid, this doesn't square, this doesn't square, this doesn't make sense, this doesn't make sense, but then I had to figure out, well, what does make sense? What does it all mean? And if you've never read the book Nausea by Jean-Paul Sartre, uh, I would recommend it. It's actually a short read. And what it refers to is existential angst, because the moment you say there's no God, then there's a lot of other questions that you sort of need to be able to answer. And this was my struggle for decades. Okay, how to deal with this. Plus, everybody's talking about freedom. Oh, and I can believe this and blah blah blah. And people trying to, you know, basically funnel you into systems. It kind of reminds me of one of the Walking Dead episodes that was a very short-lived. I think it got resolved in 2 episodes, where the guy created this trap where it was all orchestrated to make Rick and all his people, go through this tunnel and end up in a trap. But that situation got turned around, quickly. But in a way, that is sort of like a metaphor, we're kind of railroaded in to a certain situation, and so it's not easy. It is not easy, um, you know. And at some point in time, I actually managed to be in a situation where I could reach out to other atheists, and it's like more of a social thing. It wasn't really where atheism was the center necessarily of the conversations, but people were having social gatherings, and these were people who really, they just didn't talk about God, and that's very comforting. Now I don't give a shit that much, and but at that time I really needed that, and so I did, relate with different people. And then when you start relating with different people, of course, you see, well, there's different political attitudes, or different, actually, sort of metaphysical attitudes. There are some atheists that have like these metaphysical ideas, and for me, that is nonsense too. You can believe that if you want. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to think. I'm just expressing myself here. And so this is just me talking, and this is what works for me. And I can honestly tell you that it was a struggle. It was a struggle. And right now I'm 63 years old, and not quite 63 and a half. Okay. And I can almost say that I really started to kind of come into my own as far as being able to own the information and everything just recently. It's not like I knew this. There's a lot of people say, "Oh, I was an atheist since I was a kid," and blah blah blah. That's cool. Hey, if that was you, then excellent. Uh, but again, it's how once you say that, you do have some blanks to fill in, because people do make a lot of assumptions with regards to what that means, and that I already covered. Now, here's why I said, going back to, some people say, well, then you're an agnostic. And in a sense, yes, I am. I am an atheist and I'm agnostic. And some people don't understand how that can be. And I'm going to explain that. Agnostic, what that means really is it comes from sort of like the school of Gnosticism. And the Gnostics believed that the ultimate truth is knowable. Okay, that you can know the ultimate truth. And see, I don't think that's true. I just, again, and this is based on the things that I said before, is that, the ultimate truth is so complex, just so mind blowing. We're just not equipped to fucking handle that shit. We just aren't. So I don't side with the Gnostics as far as believing that a person can find the ultimate truth, and therefore I'm agnostic. And as an agnostic, I have a stronger assertion. And an atheist, it's not so. It's not an assertion that God doesn't exist. It's sort of it's a place in the middle that says, I just don't have enough to really believe that, or to accept it. Not even believe, accept it, because you have to accept it. Belief is one thing, but acceptance is another. Belief doesn't mean shit, but acceptance, that means a lot more. So as an agnostic, I assert that I don't think the ultimate truth is knowable. I can be wrong, and I'm okay with that. Again, I'm basically indifferent to the consequences of having that thought, because I've stopped managing my life based on these things. Okay, so I'm an atheist because I just don't want a God. I mean, I don't need a God, and I don't accept the standard definitions of God. And it's like I don't ascribe to the whole sycophancy of like praising to get that ticket, those 2 tickets to paradise, like Eddie Money would say. I don't want. Uh, These there are people who are scared of. Most people are scared of dying. Who wouldn't be scared of dying? You know, but I'm not, because I know that at a certain time it's going to happen. And I'm not worried about what happens afterwards. I'm just not. If something happens, that's fine. That's cool. Whatever. I have other shit to deal with. And the shit that's happening right now, it's not, all this like afterlife nonsense is just that. It's just nonsense, and it's just this desire to cling on to our ego and hope that we can sort of live in perpetuity. I kind of look at reincarnation, that this, and whether I'm not going to go there. I just don't. There's no reason for me to waste time on that. No, again, I'm just kind of establishing my parameters, if you will. Okay, so atheist, agnostic, okay, and naturalist. And what does that mean? Okay, well, basically it means that I accept the conditions that I am in, and trying to understand the natural surroundings that I have. You know, if there is no explicit order, there is some kind of order, but it's not explicit, and most of the structures are just artificial structures. These are structures that were created to try to help organize a society, so that there is some kind of social conventions and blah 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 blah. And I think actually they kind of overdo it, not like the government does right now in some respects, especially with these Republicans, where the the only thing that we need to fucking look at, and this is just like so simple, so simple. I mean, we don't even have to waste time in the book. And I have read the Bible. I read a lot. I can't say that I've read it entirely, but I've read a lot, and I've really read a lot of the New Testament, more than the Bible, different versions and stuff like that. I mean, this is not. I'm not just like kicking sand in the eye of religion or the Bible or whatever, because and just for the sake of kicking sand and saying it's nonsense without having any knowledge of it. No, I don't have plenty of knowledge of it. I was versed. I was. People tried to basically indoctrinate me, and they kind of did, even though I resisted, because there were still other things that were happening, that I had to kind of fall in line with. Oh, one of the worst experiences that I had was with my third child, when my wife wanted to basically do the communion. And, I went along with my first two children, and my struggle was so intense that I was just freaking out. And I couldn't go into the church. I just can't. I couldn't walk into the church because the behavior is just so bizarre to me. It really doesn't make sense. You know, this supplication, and this, it's like, oh, and oh, thank you, and blah, 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 blah. It is just complete nonsense to me. To me. What And if you take to offense to that, hey, I'm sorry. I don't need you to convince me of shit. So, as a naturalist, I don't think that being a human is any better than being any other animal. Really, I mean, because I come from the animals. I mean, all of the information that we have in our body, they say that we don't use the entirety of our brain. I mean, we have DNA, we have, molecules and atoms. In fact, I mean, every one of us is like a walking universe. I mean, all the shit that happens. And there are philosophers that talked about the elan vital, that light source or light force, and that's the only thing that I kind of see. you know um, so, I mean, yes, there are structures, but most of them are artificial structures. Now, in nature, this is, and I got into studying sociology and social psychology and biosociology, reading E.O. Wilson. Not very much, because it's actually very difficult, and I wasn't, sort of, I didn't go down the science lane. I kind of went more down the humanities lane when it came to school. And when I went to school, everybody was going to get a job to make money, and I went to get an education. I mean, that's the bottom line. I hadn't really thought about, and it's not because I was privileged. I was actually poor. I was actually poor. But to me, selling myself to somebody, and sort of establishing a career, a life thing, is just like, it didn't make sense to me, and no, I was a crazy fuck. I mean, I'm not going to. I was I was a very I was a wild animal, really, and my aunt just told me a story. She's visiting my mom's sister. She told me about a situation where somehow, I mean, apparently, I always was a little rebellious. And apparently, in my household, when I was around maybe 8, 9 years old or something like that, there's some clothes that was dropped on the floor or something, and I just once she mentioned, I just kind of barely remember this, where my mother said something to ask me to pick something up, and apparently she said I kind of like puffed out my chest like some kind of cocky rooster, and it's like, I'm not going to do it, or again, I don't remember exactly, but my mom got so pissed off that she actually, and my mom was like 5 foot, 4'11" or 5'2", I can't remember exact height. Yeah, but that apparently she grabbed the broom and stood on a chair and started hitting me with the broom. I do not remember that. Okay, but it's interesting as far as the dynamics and controls. And then my mother sent me to Catholic school, me and my sister. My mother busted her ass. I mean, this is not stuff that was done maliciously or anything like that. And I'll never blame her for that. But, I can use the experience to sort of explain how I ended up where I ended up and how I did what I did, and I will be the first person to say I have made a shitload of mistakes, but I don't regret them, because what I've actually managed to do once I sort of reached the very bottom, once I reached the very bottom, and if you've never been to the very bottom, I know it's going to be hard to imagine or to know what that really is, but to just kind of be boom, kind of, you know, I'm on my own. I'm just I'm on my own. I'm fucked. I'm screwed. It really tore me down. And then from that point, I started to do something to help myself. And in a period, I really haven't kept track of the time that well, but for all practical purposes, when I turned 60, I was close to weighing 250 pounds. And today I weigh 170, thereabouts. What did I do to get there? A lot. I mean, I sacrificed everything. I just ignored the structures, and I did what was important to take care of myself. And what I did started to do was walking, and it wasn't easy. I can tell you, the first day that I tried to go walking, I stepped out of the house and maybe took 6 steps and walked right back in. And then another day I walked out and I maybe walked half a block down, and I started looking at my feet and they kind of looked weird in my shoes and blah blah blah, and like I walked back, but I kept doing it. I kept doing it, and I always did it with a purpose. You know, it's just I always did it with a purpose. Like, it wasn't ever just like, ooh, a casual walk down the street or anything like that. Every time I tried to walk a little bit faster, and I would do these routes in my neighborhood, and I was like measuring the time and the distance and stuff like that. But everything, it kind of evolved, it grew. And of course, eventually I actually went to running. And so now at 63 years old, I can fucking run 5 miles and without a problem in the middle of the day, as long as I have some water to hydrate and stuff like that. My knees don't hurt, nothing. And because the way I kind of looked at it as a naturalist is, I'm an animal, so I'm going to take care of myself like an animal. I'm going to do the things that animals do, to try to be in fine shape, like a lion and a tiger and so I figured, hey, what better way to do this shit than to run? Boom, 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 boom. If I'm in danger, I'm going to have to run. Boom, 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 boom. So anybody that's fucking chasing me right now, they're going to have a hard time. I might not necessarily be incredibly fast, but as far as my endurance goes, 2 half marathons, 13 miles, in the last 7 months, not too shitty. You know, and I'm not saying that to brag or anything like that. I'm just kind of laying out a truth. I'm trying to be honest, I think that's been always kind of like a difficult thing for me, because or it's always been difficult for whatever reason not to be honest. And there was a time in my life when I stopped being honest. What I did was I basically accepted the structures that were given to me sort of by force. And even then, I was rebelling, alcoholic, drug addict. I mean, it is horrible. I wouldn't wish my experiences on anybody. But I slept on the streets in New York City. But I've also had 3 martini lunches, with the institutional money managers for high net worth clients, trying to figure out how exactly they had a process for building an investment portfolio that would be more successful and having better returns than some of the other money managers. Okay, so I, mop floors and greasy spoons and wash dishes, but I've also given presentations to CEOs on how to invest money. So it's not like I'm some fucking dumbass that just coming up and saying, "Hey, let me talk about the shit that I know." I really do think that whenever I have an argument, I have very little patience with people because I can almost tell with their very first sentence how uninformed they are. And you see, for me, the most important thing, I mean, if somebody's going to make a statement, especially if it's going to be an accusatory statement, right then, I mean, I know they're just stupid because you can't judge a book by its cover. You cannot assume that you know shit about me just because you see me and you hear me speak. That is not enough. That is not enough. And especially when I say, it's if you haven't walked in my shoes, you don't know shit. Bottom line, okay? And I'm telling you right now, I have fucking done a lot of shit, and I guess it's just by my nature. I understand that I'm not risk adverse. Uh, Again, this has not ever been easy. It has always been a struggle. It has been ugly, ugly, ugly. It has had a negative impact on my domestic life. It had a negative impact on my financial life, as far as the relationships that I can manage with people and how these things, and because it's always coming in conflict with my core set of beliefs. But I didn't know that. And so I kind of rebelled against it and what have you, and blah, 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 blah. So here we are, you know, I came into my own. Now, if I showed you a picture of myself, in 2020, which I can post at some point in time, you know, you'll see the face is completely different. I have actually changed. I have transformed myself. I am not that person. I am not that person psychologically. I'm not that person emotionally. I'm not even that person physically anymore. And I'm celebrating my difference. And it's not easy, uh, uh, but yeah, I feel it's necessary. I don't think that I need to control myself. And when people say, "Oh, they say, oh, dude, fucking act your age," I'm just like, "Fuck you, fuck you." Why don't you send me the book on how I'm supposed to behave so I can shit in it and then send it back to you? Okay, because there are no true ways to behave at certain age. As a matter of fact, I do think that if you think you're old, then you start to exhibit your oldness, and I can actually show you the picture of what I look like, when I was 60, and I look older. I can show you the picture on my driver's license. I look older. I had people say to me right now, "Dude, I'm 45 and you look fucking better than me." You know, and I don't know. And it's not really sort of like a narcissistic type of thing where, I want to look better than anybody or anything like that. It's just for me. It makes me feel, and I'm healthy. I don't take any medicine. The only thing I like to do is smoke weed. And typically I use it in the opposite way. People that smoke indica, they know that the indica slows you down and puts you on the couch. I love smoking indica and running because that it settles me in, and I listen to music, and it's just a awesome experience. I can tell you this one thing: when I transitioned from walking to running, one of the things that I actually did, I started to race myself. And so for 1 mile, I would walk it as fast as I could. And for 1 mile after that, I would run it. And I would see which was faster. And there was a time when I walked faster than I ran. That's not the case anymore. And I hurt my foot in a bicycle accident not too long ago. So I haven't been able to run, but fortunately, I have conditioned myself so well because I mean, this is like running every day. I've run like 200, 250 miles in a month, you know. Uh, that my recovery is really good. It's almost like a Wolverine type of thing. It's like this I had a bike accident, and I had this on my elbow. I flew. It was spectacular. I mean, I flew. Fortunately, it was not on the road. It was on a sidewalk, and it was a non-transit, not a very traffic road. So there was only one car that went by, and I think they actually saw me, and because they slowed down and then they kept going on. But there's no safe bike paths, so occasionally I have to move from the road over to the bicycle, or to the sidewalk, I mean. And it happened on the sidewalk where I just kind of lost control a little bit, and I hit I went off of the sidewalk and into the landscape, and then I lost control there. And the only thing that I could think of doing once I lost that control, because my foot was still fucked up, was just like, I kind of flew, and I hit my elbow, I hit my knee, I got bumps on my shins and stuff like that. I had, but I picked myself up. I got myself home, and I put some ice on it, and I started taking care of it, and I'm better. I haven't been able to run just yet, but I'm getting really, really, really close. Okay, so I think I kind of summed it up in, I think, a fairly decent way. You know, Atheists, I'm not going to get in discussion. It's just a ridiculous discussion. There's nothing nobody can prove. Most of the arguments that you hear are circular arguments. People point to the Bible, the truth. The dumbest thing is, oh, you're a lie, so God exists. At best, I will tell you, if I'm going to accept the God premise. And I actually mentioned this to a friend of mine in passing, and I know him and his wife are kind of religious, but he was like, holy shit, I never heard that. And what I said to him was, you know what? If anything, if there is a God, God isn't outside. He's not a puppeteer, kind of like creating shit and just kind of an overlord and looking at things. Just in case I hope they have tacos in hell. He's not looking at things. No, if there was a Big Bang, then I am part of that Big Bang. I am like an God blew up, and I'm kind of like an ember, just a flame that is flicking in a short period of time, of time space. That's it. That's it. And so, what I want to do, if it says God is inside, but in order to find God inside, you have to face your own personal demons, your personal truths. You have to be able to accept who you are and express who you are without any hesitation. You can't let other people control you. And I can go back, and I may go back into other, citing other examples of, how the sort of the mechanics of this work. But man, you can't undo this shit. You really can't. I mean, easily. And like I said, I declared myself an atheist at an early age, and even then, I still had to struggle with that for decades, decades. Because there's things that are tied into it, your livelihood, how you survive. And so people kind of keep giving up portions of themselves in order to kind of fit into the stream. And the more you have to do that, the worse it is. And of course, the higher the hierarchy, the more you have to sacrifice yourself. So, I mean, there are people, sadly, right now that are complete slaves to the system with no knowledge. Like they think it's normal. They think this is the way things are supposed to be, but they're not. We can create our realities. I mean, there's people say, well, with guns, they take away guns. So how am I going to supposed to? So why do you need to defend yourself? Why do you think you're going to be attacked? Don't we live in a social society? Now, in this country, I think the worst thing that's happened is that there's this emphasis on the individual more than the social good. And at the end of the day, this is my favorite saying right now: democracy is greed's enemy. Okay. And people can have a lot and they still want more. And Mahatma Gandhi, I just saw this quote. I watched a horror movie that was recommended by Darren over on Flick Connection, which I love watching him. He has great reviews, great suggestions, great updates on the best movies that are available on Netflix and stuff like that. So if you've never checked him out, check out Darren. He's pretty cool. I like him. But it was a horror movie from India, and I'm going to have to watch it again because it was at night, and it's it's a little different, and I didn't kind of catch it, and I have bad hearing. I actually wear hearing aids, and I lost them. And I have to find them, and blah blah. I don't have money because I chose to live in poverty because I think it's a lot easier to live in poverty than it is to try to play other people's games. You know, and most of these games are based on false premises. There's no reason why people should be working 40 hours a week. Where the fuck are we going in such a hurry? The only reason that we're doing this is because we're wound up dolls, or like I say, meat puppets. A lot of us. I'm not saying everybody. And then when people start to realize this, some of them just say, okay, I guess, there's nothing I can do to fix you. I'll just take care of myself and live a lavish lifestyle or whatever. So, not everybody does that. And I know there are some people that are enlightened. I do talk with homeless people, and since I'm not religious, I'm not trying to convert them. But I'll give them some food or something, and I met one guy who, I mean, I thought he was fucking amazing, and he was just like maybe 6 months younger than me. He looked like he was in great shape. He was you know a thin black man. I think he was from Jamaica. He told me, so he had a nice little accent. His hair was white. He had a short beard, and he was going into the public restroom at the park over in Lake Eola, which is in downtown Orlando, which is a beautiful park. If you've never been to Orlando, I would strongly suggest you go to Lake Eola because it's just a nice way to spend. You can spend a whole day there, and Sundays are beautiful because they actually have kind of like this market. There's a lot of food trucks with different things, and blah 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 blah. So, but anyway, I started talking to him, and he told me his name, and then he started telling me, how he felt about things, and I could tell he was enlightened. He was an enlightened individual, and we're brothers. We think in very similar terms, and I don't try to impose my thoughts on anybody, but I do like to share them. And he shared his thoughts. Actually, one thing that he said made me so happy. I hugged him, and he said, "Oh no, dude, I don't do hugs." And I said, "Okay, cool." And I kind of raised in the Spanish culture, hugging was part of the thing. I apologized. I said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, dude, but thanks for your patience." Blah 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 blah. And I'm looking forward to the date that I see him again because I actually consider him my friend now. But so going back to so if anything I am the part of the exploded god, is how I look at it. I do think that the Bible has a lot of good metaphors, that has actually some lessons, and for me the takeaway from Genesis is not even a marriage is safe. There's going to be the conflict can start at the very beginning in the core nucleus between the man and the woman. The woman went, Eve went around and fucked around, just kind of fucked with this, this sliding penis, talking penis, convinced her, whatever she convinced. Then it's like, oh, let's do this shit. And then what happened later? Fucking Cain kills Abel. I mean, a brother. So I mean, right from the very beginning, the Bible says, hey, there can be dysfunctions in families, but most people don't take that out of that. That for some reason, it's just like something that they don't question. Just like they don't question, why would a fucking God kill his fucking creation if he's perfect? Because his creation has to be perfect. Obviously it isn't. So blah, 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 So, okay. I think I'm going to stop right there. All right. And I think I kind of got what I needed to get out. So at this point, all I can say is, hey, stay safe. Whatever is going on in your life, I hope shit gets better. And, try to, and if it's not, just see what you can do to make it better. Kind of, you have to face your own personal demons, accept the personal truths, and, take it from there. It may take a little bit, but, if you really give it your all, you'll get there. Okay, so take care, stay safe, and that's it. Later.